There's a kind of anxiety that doesn't come with panic attacks or shaking hands. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up when you wake up before your alarm, not because you're late, but because your mind is already running. It's there when you're brushing your teeth, staring at yourself in the mirror, wondering how you got here so fast. One day you were dreaming freely. Now every dream feels like it needs a plan, a deadline, and a backup option. This anxiety doesn't announce itself as fear. It presents itself as responsibility. Bills, expectations, timelines, the unspoken pressure to be doing enough by now. No one really tells you that adulthood comes with this quiet weight, that you'll look normal on the outside, functioning, smiling, working, but internally feel like you're constantly behind, even when you're doing your best. It's the anxiety of realizing that life no longer feels open-ended. Choices feel permanent now. Time feels expensive. Mistakes feel heavier. And rest feels undeserved. You don't talk about it much because everyone else seems busy surviving too. So you learn to carry it silently, convincing yourself that this is just what growing up feels like. But the truth is, many adults are walking around with this same quiet anxiety. Unspoken, unnamed, but deeply felt. At some point, stability stops feeling like safety and starts feeling like a cage. You work hard to build a routine. Same commute, same job, same responsibilities. From the outside, it looks like success. From the inside, it can feel like repetition without meaning. This is where the quiet anxiety deepens. You're grateful for what you have, but you're also restless. And that contradiction makes you feel guilty. How can you want more when so many people have less? How can you feel trapped when you're technically doing okay? So you don't say anything. Instead, you tell yourself to be patient, to be realistic, to stop romanticizing freedom. But late at night, when everything goes quiet, the thought creeps in. Is this it? Not in a dramatic way, in a calm, terrifying way. You start measuring your life in years instead of moments. You calculate how long you can stay before it's too late to change. You feel the tension between responsibility and desire, between who you are and who you might have been. And no one teaches you how to sit with that tension. No one explains how to honor stability without suffocating your spirit. So you learn to smile through it, to keep moving, to tell yourself that this is just adulthood. One of the most exhausting parts of adult anxiety is the timeline no one officially gives you, but everyone seems to be following. By a certain age, you're supposed to have something figured out. Career, relationships, finances, purpose. Even if no one says it directly, you feel it in conversations, in family questions, in social media highlights. You start comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's finished products. And even when you know comparison is unfair, it still sinks in, because time feels louder now. Birthdays don't feel celebratory. They feel evaluative, another year older, another silent question mark. The anxiety isn't about failing. It's about running out of time to try again. You wonder if you made the wrong choices or just the right ones too early. You replay past decisions with today's wisdom, forgetting that you didn't know then what you know now. And so you carry this constant, low-level stress, like you're late for something, but you're not sure what. The truth is, most timelines are imaginary, but the pressure feels real. And living under that pressure quietly shapes how you move through life. More cautious, more afraid to risk, more afraid to start over. Even when money is coming in, financial anxiety rarely leaves completely. It just changes shape. At first, it's about survival. Rent, food, basic stability. Later, it becomes about security. savings, emergencies. The fear of one mistake undoing everything you've built. You start calculating everything, not just purchases, but life decisions. Can I afford to rest? Can I afford to change careers? Can I afford to fail? This kind of anxiety is exhausting because it never turns off. Even on good days, your mind is running numbers in the background. And it's isolating. Because talking about money feels uncomfortable. Everyone pretends they're fine. So you assume you're the only one worried. But most adults are silently stressed about money. Not because they're irresponsible, but because the margin for error feels small. One unexpected expense, one lost opportunity, one health issue, and everything feels fragile again. So you learn to carry the fear quietly, to be practical, to be careful, to delay joy until things feel safe. The problem is, safety starts to feel like a moving target. One of the strangest adult realizations is how lonely life can feel, even when you're surrounded by people. Friendships change, conversations become shorter, more surface level. Everyone is busy building their own survival systems. You still talk, you still laugh, but something is missing. Depth, presence, the feeling of being truly understood, and asking for that feels risky. You don't want to burden anyone. Everyone has their own problems. So you downplay your feelings. You become the I'm fine version of yourself. This is where the quiet anxiety turns inward. You start questioning whether something is wrong with you, why it feels harder to connect, why relationships require so much effort now. The truth is, adult life leaves little room for emotional spaciousness. And loneliness doesn't always look like isolation. It often looks like being constantly surrounded but rarely seen. That kind of loneliness doesn't scream. It settles in quietly. In your 20s and 30s, choices start to feel heavier because they're not just about now, they're about who you'll become, where you live, who you commit to, what you invest your time in. Each decision feels like it closes doors, even when it opens others. This creates a quiet paralysis. You overthink, you wait, you gather information endlessly, hoping certainty will show up before you move. But certainty rarely comes. So you live with this underlying anxiety, not about doing nothing, but about choosing wrong. And because you can't predict the future, every decision feels like a gamble with your life. You start envying people who seem sure, who move boldly, who don't second-guess every step. But what you don't see is that most people are guessing too. They're just moving despite the fear. Adulthood comes with expectations you never consciously signed up for. Be successful, be stable, be emotionally strong. Don't complain. Don't fall behind. You internalize these expectations slowly, without realizing it. Until one day, you feel guilty for resting, ashamed for struggling, weak for needing help. This is the anxiety of constantly managing how you're perceived. By family, by society, even by yourself. You become your own harshest judge. And because these expectations are often unspoken, you don't know how to push back against them. So you carry them quietly, like invisible weights. The truth is, many of these standards were never meant to be carried alone, or at all. One of the most damaging parts of adult anxiety is forgetting how to rest without guilt. Rest becomes something you earn, not something you need. And even when you do rest, your mind doesn't. You're thinking about what you should be doing, what you're falling behind on, what tomorrow demands. This constant productivity mindset turns life into a checklist. And when you're not checking boxes, you feel uneasy. But humans weren't built to be efficient machines. They were built to feel, reflect, pause. The anxiety comes from ignoring that truth for too long. At some point, a quiet realization begins to form. Maybe this anxiety doesn't mean you're failing. Maybe it means you're aware of time, of responsibility, of the weight of choice, of the reality that life is fragile and meaningful. That awareness is heavy, but it's also human. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're responding normally to a complex world that rarely slows down. This understanding doesn't erase the anxiety, but it softens it. It allows you to meet yourself with more compassion. And compassion changes everything. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety completely. It's to stop letting it define you, to carry life more gently, to allow uncertainty without panic, to make room for growth without constant self-judgment. Adulthood isn't about having it all figured out. It's about learning how to live with unanswered questions and still show up. The quiet anxiety may never disappear, but it doesn't have to control you. Sometimes, simply acknowledging it is enough to loosen its grip. If you've made it this far, take a moment to breathe. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're living in a complicated season with honesty, and that matters. If this message stayed with you, consider subscribing and supporting the channel with a like.